On the program today, we look at infrastructure in regards to development, and we also get into the mining sector. How is the mining industry doing in regards to maximizing on other minerals apart from copper? All right, thank you so much for still watching Business Day. We get into another sector, which is mining. Now, when you talk about mining in Zambia, everyone's mind will automatically shift to copper. But what about the other minerals that the country is endowed with? For example, gemstone. I caught up with an author who's written a book on gemstones, and his biggest cry, as well as his biggest message in regards to gemstone in Zambia, is the pricing structure. He has written a book in terms of where these gemstones are found, how they can be used, which their functions actually range from healing powers all the way to decorations, as well as these naturally curved stones that can be used for many other functions. This is what he had to say.
A gemstone is a precious or semi-precious stone that is made out of different types of earth formation. This is a stone that can be used as jewelry, it can be used in industry, and it can be used sometimes in domestic houses. It can be used for decorations and so on. But then there are some people that actually use it for healing. You can actually use certain type of stones to heal certain ailments. That's how come you find most of the imports that we get of gemstones from outside the country will be synthetic. But what those guys wear in Europe and other parts of the country, the world, these are stones that are natural because they understand the natural purpose of healing of the stones. Yeah.
So it having the properties of decoration, healing, as well as, just being such a precious. Why the interest in the gemstone for you particularly, in that you even write a book?
For me, the interest is to draw my readers to the industry. I want to draw the youths of this country to the industry. I want to draw the foreign people to this country so that if we can combine the foreign investment with the interest of the youth locally, we'll be able to start working on development of this industry. Because the value chain has different levels of sophistication of gemstones. So you find there are intricacies at the source, at the extraction stage. There are intricacies that you actually encounter at the trading stage. So on each level, as you grow in the industry, you find that there are areas where the youths that are unemployed can actually come in and say, I can make a living out of this. We've got too many unemployed youths, educated people, but then they take to drinking because they have nothing to do. So I want them, when they read this book, then it will give them an optical frame to look at the industry as something that they can benefit from.
I like the fact that you're bringing in issues of value addition. And when you look at the age that Zambia is in right now, it's in the industrial age.
Yeah.
Where does the gemstone sit in that radar in issues of it adding value to the industrialization process for our country?
The gemstone will fit anywhere. I'll give you just a small illustration. When we are making a living, we make a living out of things that are on the surface of the earth. But those are seasonal. If you're a farmer, you're going to plant crops for a certain period. But then when you embark on getting things that are under the soil, you find that you can actually be extracting for years and years and years. So the window of exploiting minerals is unlimited. So if we can all go back and say, okay, how can we invest in the quartz that is in the country? How can we export a lot of quartz to Europe or to Asia for industrial or other commercial purposes? Then we engage a lot of youths in the industry. We actually draw them in the industry. So the book is actually trying to put like an indelible mark in this mind of a youth to say, guys, this is where you can actually survive from. We don't all need to rely on the government for employment. We don't need to rely on companies for employment. We can actually employ ourselves. Because if we team up and say, this quartz crystal that is wanted in Europe for this function or in Asia for this function, let's make containers of it and export. Definitely, the youth of this country will get employment.
But what do you think hinders the youth or anybody who wants to get involved in the quarrying, or is it mining of the gemstone? Is it about the knowledge, or is it about the capacity to get this?
Definitely it's the capacity and the knowledge. Knowledge comes first because ignorance is a cost. So the fact that people don't know about these gemstones, they won't participate, they won't get interested in it. So I'm trying to say as an author, let them read this book and understand that anyone can actually do this business. Anyone can be in this business because this is called the untold story of Zambia, because we are not taught this story at a tertiary age. From primary to secondary school, the only resource that is talked about is a copper resource. Now I'm saying it's not only copper that we can survive from. We can actually do a lot on the semi-precious stone industry in Zambia. We can actually make a living out of it. But then we need support. We need support not only from the government, but from each other. We need to support each other in communities and say, let's come up and mine this kind of mineral and see how far it can take us. But then, if you are not interested in the extraction stage of the business, you can go to trading. You can buy and sell. There are government licenses that are given for trading. You can buy and sell gemstones anywhere in Zambia and outside Zambia. If you want, you just position yourself abroad and start working from abroad and distributing the Zambian stones.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sure you did a lot of research when writing the book. Mm-hmm. Where are gemstones found in Zambia, and when do you think Zambia as a country will be in a position to have these gemstones maximized on?
Gemstones are found in every province of Zambia. The types are different because of the formation and the different soil structures that come from different parts of the country. But there is no province in Zambia that I know of that doesn't have a type of gemstone. So the only thing that we need to do is to identify the product, look for the market and understand its value. Then we'll be able to say, okay, fine, how do we swing in as a private sector or as a government to try and bring up the industry to a point where very few people will be roaming the street because they'll say there's an alternative to survival. I can survive on this. Okay. I've had a lot of input from Ministry of Mines, the Geological Survey Department. They've supported me with input. I've been supported by Climate Change Zambia. I've been supported by Ndola Museum in the sense of the history, the origin of gemstone use in Zambia. So there's an archaeologist I've worked with, Mr. Mushokalanji. He gave me a lot of quite good information on how far back we've started using the gemstones.
What are we currently using the gemstones for in Zambia?
In Zambia, definitely it's just for adorning, to wear, to make as jewelry, and sometimes to do landscaping, like big stones that you find around this yard. People use them for landscaping. But there's a greater use, actually, apart from just displaying them and using them as jewelry. So for me, I would want to urge people to explore all the levels of sophistication in the levels of distribution for gemstones in Zambia. Then we'll be able to say, okay, fine, others can be at the extraction, others can be at the trading, others can be at the export and just manufacturing, general manufacturing of jewelry. There are a few companies that are manufacturing here, but these are individuals. Yeah, individuals. I know a lot of renowned jewelry shops that are doing their own jewelry, which is actually competing on the world market.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would be your words of, when you have to advise in regards to the book you've written, the research and the data that you've come up with on how, as a country, we can, yes, have the copper, but slightly shift to the gemstone as well to make sure that the mining sector of our economy also benefits from gemstones?
What we need is, we need some kind of a trade center, a place where you can regulate the prices, because what is killing the industry, there are no fixed prices to the minerals that are extracted from our country. So we need to have some kind of a gem center. The government has actually talked about it. They started it at some time back, but then I don't know how far they've, I can't talk on behalf of the government, but I know they've talked about a gem center. They've been training people through ZDA in different rural areas to process stones, to identify stones and other like educational programs that they give to the vulnerable.
When you look at Lusaka currently, it looks like it's a construction site because every other road is being worked on. Every other building is either being renovated pulled down or a completely new building is coming up. But what does this say about Zambia's economic infrastructure in regards to growth? What is it saying in terms of the implications on the businesses that are already existing? Is it posing any negative impact on those businesses that are in the roads that these roads are being constructed? Does it pose any negative effect on, especially in the residential areas, the tun timbers that are already in existence? We went round to see how this infrastructure is behaving in regards to positive and negative impacts. Infrastructure development is one of government's priority areas and is upheld in both the National Development Plan and the Vision 2030. Infrastructure development cuts across sectors and is unlimited. Zambia is currently having its share of this. Zeroing in into Lusaka, roads and buildings have either had an uplift or a complete overhaul. But as in every change, the process to the eventual result could be faced with some complaints. Some SMEs in the vicinity of the roads and buildings that are being constructed have complained that the duration of these constructions are taking long and has made them lose business. While some individuals say as much as they appreciate the works, some small but vital miscalculations have been noticed.
Kuchita vachita bwino manje tunati drainage especially paji vachita extend ni pang'ono maningi motoka ikanga kupita mu gate pamene vanakomba paja ni pang'ono maningi
manje simunadandaulika kuva area council avanhu ati ngati sivanapime sivanachite bwino kuona size.
Ninavaitana ine 2 times siwabwera vakambati nizabwera yesterday navaitana futi osabwera manje ava vamene vamanga vakambatise tikonka mwamene anapima batise maresident tidandaula kuti vatikire bwino pamabridge.
Business Day caught up with a development consultant, Augustine Mkandawire.
For a long time, one would say that infrastructure development was one of the biggest challenges to really achieving the desired economic development. Because as you are aware, that businesses follow where infrastructure is. So that includes roads, telecommunication networks, it could telecommunication towers, buildings, etc. But I think that looking at what Lusaka is going on now, I think it's a very positive thing, except that I'm sure that in every situation where such things come after the place has been developed and people have settled, it brings with it a lot of challenges. And I know that part of the problem that people will be talking about is basically talking about the dust, the disturbance in terms of movement of traffic, because certain roads get to be congested because other outlets have been closed. But I think that's a necessary thing, because in every situation, improvements always come with disruptions. But at the end of the day...
What do you say to those businesses that are saying the inconvenience is too much, it's taking long, you can only hold for so long?
Well, I mean that the starting point is that they need to be a little bit patient, we know. I think the inconvenience always is there because road development or infrastructure development is not a one-day issue. But I think thereafter the place is going to look much more attractive and people are going to be happier to live in better places. And I think business will boom because everyone wants to spend time where places are attractive. But at the same time, I think that it's about also trying to re-strategize in terms of sales and marketing strategies that they use. And I think that now, especially for medium to large businesses, I think they need to also think about going online, except for small businesses that definitely need to have specific physical places. But I think it's a good thing. I know that always disruptions are part of change. Because status quo, things as long as they remain stable, nothing improves. But if there's disturbance, the disturbance gets to a point where you bring about improvement. So I think my request is that for a long time we've been talking about infrastructure development as a constraint to poverty alleviation, as a constraint to economic growth. And I think for once, government has come to the podium to try to improve urban infrastructure so that I think the capital city can look attractive, And those of you who travel abroad, I think will be happier to see your Lusaka city looking as beautiful. I know that alternative thinking would think about, why are we doing this in Lusaka? We could have been doing this in Chipata. But this is not about substitution. It's about what else should we be directing our efforts. So other than the efforts that government is paying to Lusaka in terms of attractiveness of the city, beautifying the city, we need to be thinking about, well, when it comes to economic development, when it comes to agricultural development, when it comes to agricultural marketing, our farmers out there, what sort of effort, what kind of infrastructure do we need, and how soon can we put it in place? So I think it has to be a balancing act.
When it comes to buildings, most people are talking about the only things that are coming up, or the majority of the buildings coming up, have to do with malls. They have to do with, multinationals coming through with their supermarkets, which is also hindering some of the local supermarkets that we have. In as much as we have these beautiful malls coming in, the locals cannot afford to actually be accommodated in those. Your comment on that?
I think that's where now government has to talk about regulation. Because I know for once, I think I've also heard around that I think the biggest challenge we're having now is that once these buildings or offices or malls are put in place, I think priority is given to foreign owners who are able to even pay the rentals in dollars, which definitely becomes a way of excluding the locals. And in the long run, if government doesn't think about seriously implementing policies or regulations around occupancy of this, definitely we're going to get to a disaster where locals are actually sidelined completely from undertaking business in their own country. So I think that the issue of malls is not a problem. The issue of office blocks is not a problem. But I think as we think about inclusive development, as we think about equity, even when we pursue economic development, what are those policy measures, administrative policies that we need to put in place to ensure that even in the business sector, which is primarily private, is regulated to the point that also it does run on the basis of equity.
Okay. How then could we say that infrastructure development is aiding economic growth?
Well, infrastructure development, ma'am, is capital investment. And I think in the books of Zambia, when we measure GDP growth, we know that part of it has to do with government spending. So overall, economists measure GDP growth, that's gross domestic, gross domestic product, through levels of consumption, through levels of investment, so it could be both domestic investment as well as foreign investment, through levels of government spending. So when you come to government spending, we're not talking about spending on Saturdays. We're talking about spending on what is called gross fixed formation, on fiscal infrastructure, okay, on roads, on buildings, on bridges, on telecommunication towers. And that itself, in the books of accounts, is reflected as part of the growth. Because also infrastructure, as you are aware, is what attracts investment. For example, Judy, you're here. I mean, we're talking about Zambia having abundant land, but the question would be, what kind of land is considered land for investment? It's not all land. Right now, I cannot go and invest in Chama because if I have to move with my children, if I have to move with my wife, I have to consider one, do they have good hospitals? What if I suffer from malaria? Am I going to evacuate? What kind of evacuate mechanism? Does it have to be a plane? Does it have to be a helicopter? So investors look at investment destination as a total package. They have to look at schools, they look at hospitals, they look at roads, water infrastructure, etc. So once you put these things in place, it means basically you're opening them up for further investment, and you're attracting investment there to promote employment opportunities. So that's good for development.
Widening roads, putting up buildings is displacing some of the trees that we have, some of the nature that we have in these same places. And sustainable development has to do with also taking into consideration the environment. Environment is really big when it comes to sustainable development now. Yeah. Is this being put into consideration?
Well, I think that within the concept of sustainable development goals, I think there is so much now thinking around green infrastructure, okay? Thinking about putting in place infrastructure that can withstand the floods, withstand the climate changes, but also at the same time ensuring that as we destroy the trees where the roads and buildings are, we have sort of other measures to ensure that we replant trees, we make the surroundings green, because at the end of the day, there's sometimes compete. Development is about competition because you open up land that was usually idle for land and for forests, but as you open up, you pave way for infrastructure, that infrastructure adds something. But I think that the question should be, what is it that we have to do? As we open up the city, should we be replanting trees? The president is talking about green, clean city. Lusaka has always been known to be a green city. It's because of the trees that we have. So one would hope that I think part of the measures as we open up these spaces, as we put up more malls, as we put up more office blocks, that I think part of the immediate measures is to always try to plant trees that can grow quickly and can provide the sort of substitution that we need.
A comment from the Ministry of Infrastructure and Housing Development proved futile by broadcast time. That there just wraps up our program for today. Thank you so much for having been a part of it. Get to join us next week, Thursday, 19:30 for more interesting business items. On behalf of the entire Business Day crew, I am Judy Ngulube.